Take a deep breath. Let your body settle into stillness. Let your eyelids grow heavier, and allow your mind to drift back to a time before memory, before the world was shaped, before even the gods had names. Tonight I will tell you the story of Hera, the majestic queen of Olympus, goddess of women, goddess of marriage, goddess of family, a figure as powerful as she was feared, as beloved as she was misunderstood. But before Hera became queen of the skies, before her name echoed in white temples, and in the chants of priestesses, there was a darker beginning, a time of shadows, a time of silence. In the beginning there was only chaos, not chaos as confusion, but chaos as emptiness, a vast, endless void, a silence without sound, without shape, without end. From chaos came Gaia the earth, solid, fertile, eternal. And from Gaia came Uranus the sky, a vault of deep blue scattered with newborn stars. Together, Gaia and Uranus brought forth the Titans. And among the Titans, one would change the destiny of all creation, Cronus. Cronus, urged by Gaia, took a sharp sickle, and rose against his father Uranus, cutting him down, seizing his throne. From that day Cronus ruled the cosmos, together with his sister and wife, Rhea. But ruling does not quiet fear. A prophecy came, that one of his children would one day overthrow him, just as he had overthrown his father. Cronus trembled, Cronus feared, and fear made him cruel. Each time Rhea bore a child, Cronus opened his vast mouth, and swallowed the newborn whole. He devoured them one after another, first Hestia, then Demeter, then Hera, then Hades, and then Poseidon. 5 flames, 5 divine sparks, swallowed before they could shine. Imagine little Hera, tiny, fragile, her eyes still closed, snatched away from her mother's arms, swallowed by her father, drawn into darkness. Inside Cronus there was no light, no warmth, only silence and fear. No cradle, no lullaby, only a prison of shadows. But destiny does not break so easily. Even in the darkest silence, a spark waits, quiet, patient, unyielding. When Rhea bore her 6th child, she could endure no more. Her heart ached, her tears fell upon the earth, and she vowed to resist. On the island of Crete, hidden within the cave of Mount Ida, she gave birth to Zeus. To save him, she wrapped a stone in swaddling cloth, and placed it in Cronus's hands. Blinded by fear, Cronus devoured the stone, believing it to be his son. And so Zeus was hidden, raised in secret by nymphs, fed by the god Amalthea, protected by the Curetes, warriors who clashed their shields, so that his cries would never be heard. Meanwhile, Hera and her siblings remained inside the prison of Cronus, trapped in silence, suspended between life and death. When Zeus grew to manhood, wise Métis gave him a potion, a draught of power and fate. Zeus offered it to Cronus, and the Titan drank. A groan shook the heavens. Cronus clutched his belly, and then, one by one, the children he had swallowed returned to the world. First Hestia, then Demeter, then Hera, then Hades, and Poseidon. Imagine Hera's first breath of freedom. After years of silence, suddenly the sky above her, the sun warm upon her skin, the breeze soft against her face, the scent of earth, the sound of birds, the shimmer of light. She opened her eyes to a world she had never seen, yet one that had always been hers. From the darkness she was reborn, not weak, not broken, but strong. Her beauty was radiant, like dawn breaking over the mountains. Her voice was melodic, yet firm as the steady wind. Her presence commanded respect. Where she walked, flowers seemed to bloom. Where she spoke, mortals lowered their gaze. Hera was not just another goddess. She was majesty. She was dignity. She was power wrapped in grace. She was destined to be queen. And so ends chapter 1. A beginning shaped by darkness, a childhood swallowed by fear, and a rebirth into the light. Hera once devoured, now free. Her path only beginning, her destiny woven into the fabric of Olympus. Close your eyes once more. Let the images drift before you, like clouds gliding slowly across the sky. You have seen Hera's first breath of freedom, emerging from darkness into light. Now let us follow her steps, as she grows into her majesty, as she finds her place among the immortals of Olympus. After the great war, after Zeus freed his brothers and sisters, and together they rose against Cronus, the world began to change. The old order had fallen. The Titans were cast into the depths of Tartarus, and the young gods, the Olympians, claimed the heavens for their own. Mount Olympus, tall and serene, wrapped in veils of mist and light, became their dwelling. Its peaks shone with eternal snow. Its valleys glowed with flowers that never faded. Its rivers sang with water pure as crystal. Here Hera found her home, not as a child lost, not as a captive reborn, but as a goddess in her full splendor. Her steps upon Olympus were graceful and commanding. Her robes flowed like silver clouds. Her hair shimmered like polished bronze, and in her gaze was the quiet authority of one who had endured shadow, and now carried the dignity of light. Where she walked, the halls of Olympus grew silent, as though even the stones acknowledged her presence. From the beginning, Hera embodied two forces at once. She was nurturing, for she had longed for freedom, longed for family, longed for connection, but she was also proud, unyielding, and protective of what was hers. The memory of darkness inside Cronus had etched into her spirit a determination never to be diminished again. She valued loyalty. She demanded respect. And above all, she sought harmony in bonds, especially in the sacred bond of marriage. To the mortals who prayed to her, she would one day be the guardian of vows, the protector of women, the blessing of childbirth, and the sanctity of family. But among the gods, her role was still waiting to be crowned. It was Zeus who first looked upon Hera, with desire, with admiration, and with longing. Zeus, Lord of Thunder, King of the sky, already powerful beyond measure, and yet, before Hera, he felt compelled to court her, to win her, to claim her as queen beside him. But Hera was not easily persuaded. She was cautious, she was proud, and she knew the weight of union. She resisted his advances, turning away, avoiding his gaze, shielding herself with dignity. Zeus tried again and again, but Hera's heart did not yield, and so the king of the gods devised a gentle trick. One day, Zeus transformed himself into a small shivering cuckoo bird. The skies were cold, the rain heavy, and the tiny bird trembled as it landed upon Hera's windowsill. When Hera saw the fragile creature, her heart softened. She reached out her hands, cupping the trembling bird, warming it against her chest. And in that tender moment, the cuckoo changed. Feathers melted away, light blazed forth, and Zeus stood before her. In all his divine majesty, Hera gasped, surprised, moved, unable to resist the mix of compassion and awe. Zeus declared his love, promised her honor, promised her devotion, promised her the throne beside his own, and at last, Hera accepted. The wedding of Zeus and Hera was unlike any other. It was celebrated on Mount Olympus itself, attended by gods and spirits, nymphs and winds, rivers and stars. The Ori, goddesses of the seasons, wove garlands of eternal flowers. The Graces danced, their steps like ripples of joy. The Muses sang, their voices blending into melodies that wrapped the mountain in music. Gaia, the earth, gave as a gift a golden apple tree, whose branches bore fruit that gleamed like drops of sunlight. That tree would one day be placed in the gardens of the Hesperides, guarded at the edge of the world. All of creation rejoiced, for in that union, the order of Olympus was sealed. Zeus the king, Hera the queen. Together, they embodied the balance of power and dignity, of authority and harmony. Seated upon her throne of ivory and gold, Hera shone with majesty. Her crown gleamed with jewels, her scepter bore the image of the cuckoo bird, and beside her throne rested the peacock, its feathers radiant with 1,000 eyes. To the gods, she was no longer simply sister, no longer simply daughter. She was queen. She was counselor. She was the presence, before whom even the boldest grew silent. To mortals, her name became a prayer whispered in the night. Women called upon her for safe childbirth, for protection in marriage, for justice when bonds were broken. Her temples rose across Greece, at Argos, at Samos, at Olympia, each one filled with offerings, with incense curling toward the sky, with chants echoing against marble walls. Hera's power grew, not through conquest, but through reverence. Yet even as queen, Hera's heart held both light and shadow. She loved deeply. She cherished bonds, but she was also fierce. When those bonds were betrayed, Zeus, though devoted, was restless, and his passions often strayed. And Hera, proud and protective, would not forgive easily. This duality, compassion and wrath, nurture and vengeance, would define her story for ages to come. But for now, as she sat crowned upon Olympus, as the stars wheeled overhead, and as the world looked up in awe, Hera was radiant. She was queen. She was eternal. And so ends Chapter 2. The rise of Hera, the courtship of Zeus, the sacred marriage celebrated by all creation. Hera, once a child devoured by darkness, was now enthroned as queen of the heavens. Her journey, however, was only just beginning. Take a slow breath. Inhale gently, exhale softly, and let your body loosen into calm. Tonight we return once more to the timeless halls of Olympus, to walk among clouds, to breathe the fragrance of eternal gardens, and to sit in the presence of Hera, the queen of the gods. Her journey through shadow is behind her. Her marriage to Zeus has crowned her. Now she reigns as sovereign, not only over divine halls, but over the most sacred of bonds, the bond of family, the vow of marriage, the rhythm of life itself. At the summit of Olympus, where clouds swirl in gentle veils, and the air glows with unsetting light, stands a throne unlike any other. It is carved of ivory, shining with a pale, soft glow, inlaid with threads of gold that shimmer like rays of morning sun. Upon its arms rest delicate carvings of cuckoo birds and peacocks, symbols of Hera's majesty. When she sits upon it, her robe flows around her like a river of silk, white and silver, embroidered with threads of starlight. Her crown gleams with jewels that mirror the constellations above. In her hand rests a scepter, topped with the image of a golden cuckoo, the bird that recalls the moment when Zeus first won her heart. At her feet spreads the peacock, its feathers a living canvas of color, emerald and sapphire, each eye upon its tail, a silent witness to her sovereignty. The halls grow still when she enters. Even Apollo's lyre falls quiet, even Ares lowers his gaze, even Poseidon, master of seas, bows with a faint smile of respect. For Hera is not only queen, she is dignity itself. Unlike Zeus, whose power is thunder and storm, whose rule is proclaimed by flashes of lightning, Hera's power is quieter, but no less profound. She is the guardian of vows, the protector of women, the goddess of childbirth, the sanctifier of families. When mortals join their hands in marriage, they whisper her name. When women cry out in labor, they call upon her blessing. When families gather in prayer, they lift offerings to her altar. Across Greece her temples rise. In Argos, her favored city, where columns stand tall like soldiers of stone. In Samos, her birthplace of worship, where priestesses dress in white and sing her hymns. And in Olympia, where her image rests beside that of Zeus, a reminder that the throne of the heavens is shared by king and queen alike. The fragrance of incense curls upward, the sound of prayers lingers in marble halls, and Hera's presence feels near. Majestic, protective, unyielding, Hera does not merely sit upon her throne. She rules. When disputes rise among gods, her voice carries weight. She counsels, she chastises, she balances Zeus's thunder with her own sharp reason. When arrogance swells, Hera cuts it down. When promises are broken, she demands consequence. For Hera has endured betrayal before, and she will never suffer dishonor lightly. The gods may laugh, they may quarrel, they may indulge their whims, but Hera watches, and the eyes upon the peacock's tail seem to watch with her, 1,000 unblinking witnesses to the order she defends. If you travel in the lands of Greece, to quiet villages nestled in valleys, to shining cities by the sea, you will find her name upon every tongue. In Argos, her priestesses wear crowns of lilies, their steps measured, their chants soft as the rustle of leaves. In Samos, pilgrims bring peacocks, birds adorned with brilliant feathers, to walk beside her temples. In Olympia, families offer honey cakes, seeking her blessing for harmony in their homes. And in every place, women whisper her name when they feel both strength and fear. Strength, for she guards them. Fear, for she does not forgive dishonor. Hera is at once a mother and a judge, a protector and a punisher, a figure of devotion, a figure of awe. Imagine now the mountain of Olympus at night. The halls are silent. The gardens shimmer with starlight. The fountains murmur softly, their streams carrying silver reflections of the moon. Clouds drift lazily, wrapping the palaces in veils of mist. And at the heart of it all sits Hera, the queen, her throne radiant with ivory light. Her presence fills the air, calm but commanding, gentle yet unyielding. She does not roar like Zeus, nor blaze like Apollo. Her power is steady, like the rhythm of a heartbeat, like the turning of seasons. It is the power of constancy, of law, of promises kept and bonds unbroken. It is the power that mortals trust when they whisper prayers on their wedding nights, when mothers call for protection in childbirth, when families gather to honor the sacred unity of life. Hera's domain is marriage, but not only as mortals see it. For Hera, marriage is sacred order. It is not just the joining of man and woman. It is the weaving of families, the anchor of society, the mirror of divine harmony. When mortals swear their vows, they do so under her watchful gaze. When a bride takes her first step into a new home, Hera is there, invisible but present, guiding her footsteps, blessing her union. Priests and priestesses alike taught that no marriage was complete without Hera's silent approval. To dishonor vows was to dishonor Hera herself, and to earn her anger was to feel storms not in the sky, but within the home, within the heart, within the fragile threads of family. But Hera is not only the guardian of vows, she is the goddess of women themselves, protector of their strength, guardian of their dignity. In temples across Greece, women lit lamps in her honor. They carried offerings of flowers and honey, soft tokens of gratitude and devotion. Pregnant women knelt at her altars, asking for safe passage through the trial of birth. Mothers prayed for their daughters, wives prayed for fidelity, and widows whispered their grief into her marble statues. Hera listened. Hera heard. Her presence wrapped around them, like a cloak of unseen power, firm, protective, sometimes stern, but always watchful. To women she was not distant. She was near. She was both comfort and command, a divine figure who knew their struggles, and who shared their strength. In Argos, the priestesses of Hera walked in slow processions, their white robes trailing along marble steps. They carried branches of willow, symbols of resilience and renewal. The air was filled with fragrance, frankincense and rose petals scattered upon the ground. In Samos, Hera's festivals drew crowds from distant lands. Sailors brought offerings of peacocks, their feathers shining in the sun, each plume a gift to the Queen of Heaven. Children placed small garlands at her feet, their laughter echoing in the temple halls, innocent and bright. In Olympia, families presented honey cakes and golden fruits, symbols of fertility and sweetness. The altars glowed with fire, smoke curling gently upward, a bridge between mortal prayers and divine ears. Everywhere her name was spoken, there was reverence, there was awe, and there was the quiet knowledge that Hera's favor brought peace to homes, while her wrath could unravel them. Hera is often called ox-eyed, a name not for the animal itself, but for the wide, serene gaze of her eyes. They see, they know, they measure truth. But her truest symbol is the peacock, that magnificent bird, its feathers scattered with 1,000 shining eyes. Each eye watches, each eye remembers, each eye bears witness. When mortals broke vows, when men betrayed their wives, when promises fell into lies, they feared the eyes of Hera, for nothing escaped her sight. Her justice was not swift like Zeus's thunderbolt. It was steady, slow, inevitable, came like a season turning, unavoidable, unmistakable. And so even the boldest warriors, even the most daring kings, spoke her name with caution, with respect, with trembling reverence. Now, imagine again the halls of Olympus at night. The other gods sleep or wander in dreams. Apollo rests his lyre. Ares lays aside his spear. Demeter drifts among fields of golden wheat in vision. But Hera remains wakeful. Her throne gleams in moonlight. Her peacock shifts its feathers with a soft rustle. Her scepter rests beside her hand. She is not restless. She is not impatient. She is simply present, watchful, steady, eternal. Her gaze sweeps over Olympus, over the mortal world below, over the temples where lamps still flicker, over the homes where families whisper prayers. And as she watches, her presence brings stillness. Her presence brings order. Her presence brings the quiet assurance that vows are guarded, that homes are blessed, that dignity is defended. Across Greece, her temples rose like jewels upon the land. Some were vast, with marble columns gleaming in the sun. Others were small, hidden shrines beneath olive trees. But in each one the same quiet reverence lived. In Argos, where her worship was strongest, the air itself seemed scented with her presence. Priests spoke of her as the First Lady of the gods. Her statues were crowned with garlands of lilies, their fragrance drifting like soft whispers in the wind. In Samos, her temple was said to be so old, so ancient, that it stood before the Parthenon itself. Sailors arriving from distant lands would kneel at her altar before setting sail again, asking the Queen of Heaven for safe passage, asking her to watch over their wives and children left behind. In Olympia, her sanctuary stood near that of Zeus, husband and wife, side by side, each throne carved with care, each name honored with sacrifice. Yet Hera's temple, they said, was older still, as though she had been queen before the king was crowned. Mortals built in her honor, not out of fear alone, but out of devotion. For though her wrath was feared, her blessings were cherished. Families knew that without her favor, love faltered, children weakened, and homes fell into sorrow. One of the most cherished festivals of Hera was the Hieros Gamos, the sacred marriage. Imagine the scene. A procession winding slowly through the streets. Priestesses dressed in flowing white, their voices rising in soft hymns. Young women carrying torches, their flames swaying gently in the night air. Men and women alike offering garlands, their laughter subdued into reverence. The people believed that each year, Hera renewed her union with Zeus. And with that renewal, the earth itself was blessed. The rains would come. The harvest would flourish. The children of men and women would be strong and healthy. During the festival, a sacred statue of Hera was bathed in the river. Her robes washed and perfumed, her figure adorned again with jewels. The goddess was renewed, reborn with the promise of harmony and fertility. As the people sang, as the torches flickered against the dark sky, there was a sense that heaven and earth were joined once more. That balance was restored, that Hera's smile shone upon them like a quiet star. When you imagine Hera, do not see her alone. See her with her companion, the peacock. The bird spreads its feathers, and within them are 100 shining eyes. Eyes that glimmer like stars. Eyes that see the truth. Eyes that no deception can escape. The myth says that Hera placed these eyes upon the feathers of the bird, as a gift, as a remembrance of Argus, the faithful watchman of many eyes. And so, wherever a peacock walked, it carried the memory of vigilance, the beauty of eternity, the warning that vows must not be broken. When mortals looked at the peacock, they saw not only color, but judgment. They saw not only beauty, but truth. The bird became the living emblem of the queen, a creature of splendor and solemnity alike. Unlike Zeus, who struck with thunder, Hera's justice came slowly. It was not sudden lightning. It was steady rain. It was a season that could not be stopped. If a vow was broken, Hera might not punish at once, but her gaze lingered, her memory endured, and sooner or later, the weight of broken promises would return like a shadow. Mortals whispered of this justice with both fear and respect. They knew her wrath was not chaos. It was order correcting disorder. It was harmony restored through discipline. And in this, Hera was not only feared, she was trusted. She was the mother who scolded, the queen who corrected, the goddess who ensured that no oath was meaningless. Now imagine the night once more. The stars drift slowly above Olympus. The moonlight spills across the marble steps. The gardens are hushed. The fountains sing only to themselves. Hera sits upon her throne, the peacock at her side. Her hand rests upon her scepter, carved with symbols of eternity. She does not move often. She does not need to. Her stillness itself is power. Her silence itself is command. She looks across the world of mortals. She sees weddings and births. She sees laughter around hearths. She sees betrayal too. And she remembers. Always she remembers. And as the world turns beneath her watch, there is comfort, there is fear, there is reverence. For Hera, the queen of Olympus, is always present, always seeing, always guarding. There was once a maiden named Io, a priestess who served faithfully in the temple of Hera. Her days were filled with hymns and offerings, with tending sacred fires, with walking barefoot across polished stones. She belonged to the queen, body and soul. But Zeus, watching from above, saw her beauty, saw the way her hair shone like dark water, saw the way her devotion glowed like a flame. Desire stirred within him, and as so often in the tales of old, the king of gods descended. Io trembled at his approach. She prayed to Hera, her goddess, her protector, to save her from the unwanted gaze of Zeus. And Hera heard. Hera always heard. To shield the maiden, to place her beyond the reach of Zeus's desire, Hera transformed her. Her form changed. Her hands became hooves. Her voice became a low, sorrowful sound. Io became a cow, white as milk, innocent and pure. But Zeus, clever and relentless, still tried to claim her. Hera, unwilling to yield, set a guardian over the transformed maiden, Argus Panoptes, the one with 100 eyes. Day and night, Argus watched. Even as some of his eyes closed to rest, others opened. Even in darkness, even in silence, he remained vigilant. Zeus, however, sent Hermes, the trickster, the swift one, the god of cunning. Hermes lulled Argus to sleep with soft music, with whispers, with gentle melodies. One by one the eyes of Argus closed, and when all were closed, Hermes struck. Argus fell into eternal slumber. Io, still a cow, wandered the earth in sorrow. She crossed rivers, she climbed mountains, she walked across lands unknown. And always Hera sent a gadfly, a small buzzing torment, to follow her, to remind her, to keep her restless. This was Hera's way. Not quick thunder, not sudden fire, but persistence, endurance, an endless reminder that vows cannot be broken, that loyalty cannot be betrayed without cost. And though Io's path was long and weary, she remained under the gaze of Hera, the gaze of a queen who does not forget. There was another mortal woman, a princess of Thebes, named Semele. She was bright, beautiful, with laughter that rang like bells. Zeus loved her, or thought he did. He visited her in secret, his form disguised, his power hidden. But Hera once more saw everything. The queen always saw. She clothed herself in the guise of an old woman. Her steps were slow, her voice was soft, her eyes weary, and in this form, she approached Semele. "My dear," she whispered, "if Zeus is truly who he claims to be, ask him to reveal himself to you in his full glory. Do not trust a shadow. Do not love a disguise. Demand the truth." Semele, young and unguarded, believed the words, and when next she met Zeus, she begged him, "Show me your true self. Show me your full divinity." Zeus had sworn to grant her any wish. Bound by oath, he could not refuse. So he came in lightning. He came in thunder. He came in fire too bright for mortal eyes. The flames consumed Semele in an instant. Her mortal body could not bear it. But within her womb was a child, a spark of life not yet born. And Zeus in his grief snatched the child from death. He sewed it into his own thigh, carried it until it was ready to be born. That child became Dionysus, god of wine, god of ecstasy, god of liberation. And yet, beneath that myth, the whisper of Hera remained. Her words had guided the fate. Her jealousy had shaped the path. Her shadow lingered even in the laughter of Dionysus. Another tale drifts to us on the winds of time. The story of Leto, the gentle mother of Apollo and Artemis. Zeus loved her too. But Hera's jealousy was unyielding. When Leto's belly grew round with life, Hera cast a curse. She forbade the earth itself from giving Leto a place to rest, a place to bring forth her children. Imagine the wandering of the goddess, heavy with child, her feet weary, her face pale. She walked the lands, but no land would welcome her. She walked the shores, but the islands turned her away. The rivers would not stop. The meadows would not shelter her. Such was the power of Hera's command. At last only the floating island of Delos, rootless drifting, offered refuge. There, with pain and struggle, Leto gave birth to her twin children, Apollo radiant with light, and Artemis strong with shadow. And though the twins would rise as mighty gods, their first cry was born of exile. Their first breath tasted of Hera's curse. And so the tales repeat, one after another. Io transformed, Semele consumed, Leto exiled. Always Hera's presence looms. Always her shadow shapes the stories. Not because she is cruel without cause, but because she is queen. Because vows matter. Because betrayal has weight. Mortals feared her. Gods respected her. And yet, in the quiet of night, when the stars turned slowly, when the gardens of Olympus were hushed, Hera herself seemed weary, weary of jealousy, weary of vengeance, weary of carrying the crown of eternity. And perhaps, in those moments, she longed not to punish, but to be remembered as protector, as guardian, as the goddess who kept the fragile thread of marriage from unraveling. There is perhaps no tale that shows the depth of Hera's power, her anger, her persistence, and her influence on the fate of mortals, more than the tale of Heracles, the strongest of heroes. And yet, before he was a hero, before he was a man, he was only a child whose very breath was marked by Hera's wrath. Heracles was the son of Zeus, and a mortal woman named Alcmene. She was noble, gentle, a woman of beauty and kindness, but in her womb, carried in secret, was the spark of Zeus's betrayal. When Hera learned of this, her heart burned. She, the queen of Olympus, the goddess of marriage itself, was mocked again by her husband's infidelity, and so she plotted. She could not prevent the birth, but she could shape the fate. She could twist destiny itself. Alcmene labored in pain, her body trembling, her cries echoing through the halls of her home. But Hera delayed the birth. She sent her daughter, the goddess of childbirth, to hold back the moment, to keep the child trapped in the womb. At the same time, Hera hastened the birth of another child, Eurystheus, a weaker cousin, a man of little strength. But because he was born first, he was destined by fate to rule over Heracles. Thus Hera ensured that the greatest of heroes would live a life of servitude, bound to a lesser man, forced to endure trials unending. Even before his first breath, Hera's hand was upon him. When at last the infant Heracles was born, his cries rose into the night air, strong, full, defiant. Zeus smiled with pride, but Hera's anger deepened. One night, as the baby lay swaddled in his cradle, Hera sent two serpents, massive and coiled, their tongues flickering, their eyes glowing like embers. They slid across the floor, their scales hissing against the stone. They rose above the cradle, ready to strike, ready to crush the child. But the infant stirred. His tiny hands reached out, and with a strength beyond belief, he grasped the snakes, one in each hand, and squeezed. The serpents writhed, their coils thrashed, but the child's grip did not loosen, until at last, the snakes fell limp, lifeless in his hands. The servants gasped. Alcmene trembled, for this was no ordinary child. This was the son of Zeus. This was the one whom Hera had marked. And even as a baby, he was already her enemy. Years passed. The boy grew into a man, tall, broad-shouldered, with strength that no mortal could match. His name was Heracles, the glory of Hera, though the name itself carried bitter irony. For Hera did not grant him glory, she gave him suffering. In the prime of his youth, when his heart was full of joy, when his home was filled with laughter, Hera struck. She sent madness into his mind, not sudden rage, but slow confusion, a fog that clouded his thoughts, a storm that turned love into terror. Blinded by the madness, Heracles lifted his bow, lifted his club, and struck down those dearest to him, his own wife, his own children. When the madness lifted, when the fog cleared, he looked upon what he had done, and his heart shattered. His cries rose to heaven, and the gods themselves were silent. This was Hera's curse. This was her vengeance, not swift, but lasting, not lightning, but sorrow. Seeking purification, seeking atonement, Heracles went to the oracle of Delphi. He asked how he might cleanse himself, how he might find peace. The oracle, inspired by Apollo, spoke clearly. You must serve King Eurystheus. You must obey him, though he is weaker than you. And in serving him, you will perform 12 labors, 12 trials beyond mortal measure, 12 tasks that no man should survive. And only then, only after suffering, shall you be purified. This was Hera's design. The cousin born early through her will, Eurystheus, now became master of Heracles, and the hero's suffering became legend. The first task was the lion of Nemea, a beast with skin no weapon could pierce. Its roar shook the hills. Its claws shredded armor like cloth. Heracles pursued it through forests, through valleys, through caves where shadows grew long. His arrows shattered against its hide. His sword bent against its flank. But Heracles, with his strength, with his will, caught the lion in his arms, and strangled it with sheer might. He skinned the beast with its own claws, and wore the pelt upon his shoulders, a cloak of indestructible power. From that day forth, he was crowned in lion's hide, a symbol of triumph, a warning to all who opposed him. And yet, in the shadows, Hera's eyes still watched. 1 labor done, 11 remained. The second task was the Hydra, a serpent of the marshes, its breath poisonous, its heads many. Cut off 1, and 2 more grew in its place. Heracles battled the beast, its head snapping like thunder, its coils striking like waves. With fire and sword, with the aid of his nephew Iolaus, he burned the stumps as he cut, preventing new heads from rising. At last the Hydra lay still, its venom dripping into the earth, its breath silenced. Heracles dipped his arrows in its blood, and from that day, no wound from his bow would ever heal. Again he triumphed. Again Hera's plan bent but did not break. And so the labors continued, each one greater, each one heavier. The boar that thundered through the snow, the birds whose wings were sharpened bronze, the mares that fed upon flesh, the bull that shook the island of Crete, the golden apples guarded by a serpent eternal, the hound Cerberus, 3-headed guardian of the underworld. Each trial was a mountain, each triumph was a wound, and through it all, Heracles endured. Through it all, Hera pressed him forward, never releasing, never forgiving. In the quiet of night, when the stars turned slowly, when the fires of Olympus dimmed, Hera sometimes reflected. Heracles was her enemy, yet he was also her creation, not by birth, but by trial. For every labor, every suffering, was her gift, her shaping, her mark upon him. Without Hera, Heracles would not have been remembered. Without Hera, his strength would not have been tested. Without Hera, his legend would not have been eternal. And so, in a way, Hera was not only his tormentor, she was his maker. Her wrath was the fire, Heracles was the steel, and from their struggle, a hero was forged. And so the tale of Hera and Heracles became one of the greatest stories of Greece, a story not only of conflict, but of creation, not only of vengeance, but of destiny. For Hera's power lay not in destruction alone, it lay in shaping the course of lives, in bending fate itself, in ensuring that the name of Heracles would echo forever, and that her own, as queen, would never be forgotten. And now, as the stars drift once more above Olympus, as the gardens grow silent, as the peacock closes its many eyes, Hera leans back upon her throne, The queen has spoken through stories. The queen has left her mark. The queen has shown that even in wrath, there is creation. And the listener, the dreamer, the mortal who lies beneath the sky, may close their eyes, may breathe slowly, and may drift into sleep, carried upon the stories of Hera, the eternal queen of Olympus. In the shimmering heights of Olympus, where the clouds curl like soft white veils, and the stars shine like eternal lamps, Hera sits upon her throne. Her gaze, steady and unyielding, does not fall only upon gods and kings. It falls upon the humble, upon mortals, upon the women who walk beneath the sun, and the men who vow their hearts in union. For Hera is not only queen of the heavens, she is the guardian of marriage, the protector of vows, the witness to promises made between two souls. In ancient Greece, when two lovers came together to join their lives, they did not stand alone. They did not bind themselves in silence. They called upon Hera, queen of Olympus, goddess of the sacred bond. Imagine, if you will, the quiet of a Greek village, the air heavy with the fragrance of fresh laurel, with garlands of roses and violets woven together. Torches burn at every doorway, their flames flickering like living prayers. Inside a home, a bride prepares. Her hair is combed with fragrant oils. Her veil of pure white linen rests across her shoulders. Her hands tremble with nervous anticipation. Outside, the groom waits, his head crowned with wreaths of ivy and myrtle. And in every whisper, in every prayer spoken under breath, the name of Hera is invoked. Hera, bless this union. Hera, guard these vows. Hera, let fidelity reign in this house. For without her, a marriage was but an empty shell. With her, it became sacred, unchangeable, an echo that reached even Olympus itself. The Greeks believed that Hera's very marriage to Zeus, though stormy, though turbulent, was a divine reflection of the bonds of mortals. Her story was not one of ease. It was one of challenge, of testing, of endurance. And so mortals prayed, may our love endure storms, as Hera's endured. May our house stand strong, as Olympus stands. May our vows hold firm, as the goddess holds her throne. Every offering at a wedding feast, every slice of bread shared between bride and groom, every drop of wine spilled in libation, was dedicated to her. In Argos, her most sacred city, processions moved through the streets, women in flowing white robes, men bearing garlands, children scattering petals of lilies and poppies. They walked to the temple of Hera, a place where towering columns rose to the sky, where the air itself seemed hushed with reverence. Inside, a statue of the goddess awaited them, her crown tall, her staff steady, her peacock at her side, its many eyes shimmering like stars. Before her they sang hymns. Blessed Hera, guardian of brides, protector of wives, guide us in our love, bind us in harmony, shield us from betrayal. Let our union be strong. Beneath your eternal gaze, the voices rose together, soft at first, then swelling, filling the temple until the very stones seemed to hum. And Hera above, listened, for though she was a goddess of wrath, though her jealousy burned like fire, she was also a goddess of care, of protection, of the sacred threads that tie one life to another. There was once a young couple in a small Greek town. They had little wealth, no golden crowns, no ivory couches, no treasures of silver, but they had love, deep and steady, And on the night of their wedding, they walked together to a shrine of Hera. They brought only a simple gift, a small clay pot filled with honey. They placed it before her image and whispered, "Lady Hera, we have nothing to give but this. But may our love be sweet as honey, and may our days flow as steadily as the bees' labor." The wind stirred softly. The flame of their torch flickered, and in their hearts, they felt her presence, a warmth, a steadiness, a quiet blessing. And though their lives remained humble, their marriage endured. Through storms, through loss, through sickness, their bond never broke. And the villagers whispered. Hera walked with them. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine a vast temple bathed in the soft golden light of dawn. Marble columns rise into the sky, veiled with ivy and wild roses, while the sound of distant waves echoes across the land. In the air there lingers the perfume of fresh laurel, mingling with the faint smoke of incense rising slowly toward the heavens. Women dressed in flowing linen gowns gather before a sacred altar. Their voices, low and reverent, weave together in hymns dedicated to one name, Hera. For the ancient Greeks, Hera was not merely the queen of Olympus. She was the very essence of marriage, the guardian of promises, the unseen witness at every vow exchanged beneath the sun and the stars. Every thread of the bridal veil, every garland placed upon the heads of newlyweds, every cup of wine shared between husband and wife carried her invisible blessing. Hera's presence was not thunderous like Zeus's, nor mischievous like Hermes's. Hers was solemn, enduring, woven into the fabric of daily life. In myth and ritual alike, Hera was celebrated as Telia, meaning the completer. To the Greeks, marriage was not simply a bond of affection. It was the completion of life's circle, the foundation of family, society, and even civilization itself. Hera presided over this circle. When a man and a woman joined together, their union was not theirs alone. It was sanctified, woven into the tapestry of cosmic order, and Hera was believed to guard it with unwavering watchfulness. She was invoked during wedding feasts, honored in processions, and praised in prayers whispered at bridal chambers lit by oil lamps. Picture such a chamber. Walls washed in warm ochre tones, decorated with garlands of ivy. A bed draped with linen scented with rosemary and lavender. At its head, a small clay figurine of Hera, standing tall with her crown and scepter, watching silently. Newlyweds would pour a libation of honeyed wine before her image, beseeching her for harmony, fertility, and protection. Across Greece, the rituals honoring Hera varied from city to city, yet all reflected her deep connection with marriage. In Argos, the city most devoted to her, processions known as the Heraia were celebrated. Young maidens, their hair crowned with flowers, carried offerings of pomegranates and apples, symbols of love and fertility. They sang hymns as they marched to Hera's grand temple, its walls gleaming white against the blue of the sky. At the altar, brides-to-be would kneel and place a lock of their hair before the goddess, offering a fragment of themselves as a symbol of devotion. In Samos, where one of Hera's greatest temples stood, the islanders held festivals where newlyweds would walk hand in hand toward her sanctuary. Priests would lift their voices in prayer. Hera Telia, keeper of union, bless these two with harmony. May their bond reflect the strength of heaven and earth. May their home be a temple of fidelity, and their children blessings to the land. In Athens, women would call upon Hera during childbirth as well, for she was not only the guardian of marriage but the protector of women at every stage of life, bride, wife, and mother. In quiet homes, mothers whispered her name while rocking infants to sleep, believing that Hera's unseen hand cradled their children beside them. Every deity bore symbols, and Hera's were rich with meaning. To envision them is to enter her world. The diadem or crown rested upon her brow, shimmering with authority. It was not merely a mark of power but a sign that she reigned as the sovereign of sacred vows. The scepter, tall and regal, symbolized her dominion over fidelity. The peacock, with its feathers adorned by eyes, reminded mortals that nothing escaped her watchful gaze. Each iridescent plume was like a star in the heavens, an eternal reminder that the goddess of marriage saw all and remembered all. The pomegranate, bursting with seeds, symbolized fertility and abundance, a fruit offered at weddings to invoke blessings of children and prosperity. Imagine a wedding feast in Corinth, tables spread with bread, olives, honey, figs, and roasted lamb. In the center of it all, a great bowl of pomegranates gleams, their crimson seeds spilling like rubies. Guests lift their cups of wine and toast to Hera, praying that the marriage they celebrate will bear fruit as plentiful as the seeds of the sacred fruit. Yet Hera was not only a figure of blessing, she was also a reminder of duty. In Greek thought, a marriage was not a fleeting passion. It was a bond sealed before gods and men. Hera was ever watchful, ensuring that promises were kept. This watchful presence carried both comfort and solemnity. To those who honored her faithfully, she was a shield. But to those who broke their vows, she was a storm. Her jealousy, so often told in myths of Zeus's wandering heart, reflected not pettiness but the gravity with which the Greeks regarded fidelity. If even the king of the gods could not escape her wrath for breaking the sanctity of marriage, then mortals surely could not either. Picture the flicker of a lamp in a quiet home. A woman waits for her husband to return, whispering to Hera for patience, for harmony, for reconciliation. The goddess listens. In the silence of night, she is the unseen counselor, guiding the fragile threads of union, weaving them back together when torn. For countless women, Hera was more than myth. She was a presence in the rhythm of daily life. Her name was invoked when brides braided their hair, when wives lit the hearth fire, when mothers tucked children into bed. At dawn, women grinding grain at their stone mills would pause to murmur, "Hera, grant strength to my home." At dusk, when shadows lengthened, they whispered, "Hera, keep watch over my family." Hera was not distant. She was woven into the intimate moments of mortal life, a goddess both majestic and maternal. And so, in the gentle glow of ancient lamps, beneath the marble arches of her temples, and within the hearts of countless women, Hera's role as protector of marriage and women came alive. She was not a goddess who demanded thunderous spectacle. She was a goddess of constancy, of devotion, of bonds that endured. To think of Hera is to think of two hands clasped together, of vows whispered with trembling voices, of homes filled with laughter, tears, and the eternal dance of love and duty. As we pause here, imagine yourself standing in one of her sanctuaries. The incense curls upward, soft hymns echo against marble walls, and the steady beat of your heart joins with the rhythm of ancient prayers. Hera is there, watching, blessing, completing. Imagine a city at twilight. The sun sinks beyond the horizon, painting the sky in hues of rose and amber. Street torches flicker to life, and the air hums with the mingled voices of merchants closing their stalls, children laughing, and women carrying water from the fountains. In the distance rises a grand temple, its columns soaring like pillars of dawn, its steps worn smooth by countless feet. This is Hera's dwelling among mortals, the place where vows are spoken, where brides pray, where wives seek counsel. Inside the sanctuary the silence feels sacred. The scent of frankincense hangs in the air, and the walls echo with centuries of whispered prayers. Upon a high pedestal stands the statue of the goddess, carved from ivory and gold. Her gaze is serene yet piercing. One hand holds the scepter of queenship, the other a pomegranate heavy with seeds. At her feet rests a peacock, feathers spread in shimmering arcs of emerald and sapphire. Here men and women alike bow low, for all know that marriage without Hera is no marriage at all. When two souls joined in marriage, Hera was called upon as witness. Without her the union was thought incomplete. Priests would remind the couple, "Your hands may join by choice, but your bond endures only because Hera blesses it." The ritual was rich with symbolism. The veil, a bride's veil woven with white wool and sometimes dyed with saffron threads, was lifted before Hera's altar. It symbolized purity and readiness for union. The torch, a flame, was carried from the bride's home to her new dwelling, representing Hera's eternal watch over the hearth. The cup of honeyed wine, shared by bride and groom, this was not merely a toast but a covenant. Each sip whispered, "We are one under Hera's gaze." Even in simple homes far from temples, families imitated these rites. A clay cup raised, a whisper spoken, and Hera's name carried into the night like a flame upon the wind. For the Greeks, Hera was not passive. She was present in every vow, in every whispered promise. To the faithful she was a shield. But to those who betrayed their bond she was a storm. Stories told of her jealous wrath, tales of Zeus's wandering heart and the mortals caught in divine struggles. Yet beneath these myths lay a deeper truth. Hera's jealousy reflected the sacredness of marriage. If the king of the gods himself was held accountable for faithlessness, then mortals could not hope to escape. Imagine a husband tempted to break his vow, glancing at the feathers of a peacock in his garden. Each eye seemed to watch him, silent and unblinking. The message was clear. Hera sees. Hera remembers. Hera holds the vow sacred. Across Greece, Hera was honored with festivals that celebrated her guardianship over marriage and fertility. In Argos, the Heraia filled the streets with music. Women carried baskets of fruits and flowers, singing hymns as they processed toward her sanctuary. At the temple, bulls were sacrificed, their hides stretched upon the walls as offerings. Brides-to-be brought locks of their hair, laying them upon the altar to symbolize leaving behind their childhood and stepping into the circle of Hera's protection. In Samos, her great temple stretched for miles, columns gleaming like white forests against the sky. Pilgrims came from distant lands, bringing doves, apples, and garlands of roses. During the Tanaia festival, her sacred statue was bound with ribbons and taken to the seashore, where it was bathed in the waves and renewed, as if the goddess herself were being prepared for another year of guardianship. In Sparta, Hera was worshipped as Hera Gamelia, Hera of marriage. Here, newlyweds honored her with feasts of roasted lamb and sweet honey cakes. As they ate, they prayed for children who would one day strengthen the city's walls and carry their names into eternity. For mortal women, Hera was not distant. She was invoked at every stage of life. At birth, mothers whispered her name as midwives called upon Eileithyia, her daughter, goddess of childbirth. At marriage, brides prayed for harmony and strength, often leaving offerings of apples, symbol of love, or coins wrapped in cloth as tokens of gratitude. In motherhood, women thanked Hera for every child born healthy, for every hearth kept warm. In widowhood, women sought her for comfort, believing that Hera wept with them, as she too knew the sting of betrayal and loneliness. Imagine a young girl in Athens, braiding her hair as she prepares for her wedding. Her mother places a garland of myrtle upon her head and whispers, "Call to Hera, child. She will walk beside you." That night, as the girl lights her bridal chamber, she kneels and touches the floor with trembling hands. "Hera, make me a good wife. Hera, keep our bond strong. Hera, let my children know joy." These simple prayers, spoken not in temples but in the quiet of homes, carried Hera's presence into the heart of mortal life. It is easy to imagine Hera only as wrathful, chasing Zeus's lovers with storms and curses. But her essence was dual. She blessed as fiercely as she punished. A faithful union thrived under her watch. Homes filled with laughter, children grew strong, and harvests prospered. But a broken vow called down storms of sorrow, infertility, discord, or misfortune. To the Greeks, these were not random events. They were Hera's justice, reminding mortals that love was not mere pleasure but sacred duty. And so, Hera stood as both gentle mother and stern queen. She smiled upon love that endured, yet she did not forgive easily when promises were broken. In her, mortals saw both the sweetness of devotion and the weight of responsibility. Picture again her peacock, feathers spread in radiant arcs. Each eye is a memory, a vow kept, a vow broken. Each plume whispers, "I see, I remember, I guard." And beneath her watch, humanity learned that marriage was more than desire. It was covenant, endurance, and the weaving of two souls into one tapestry blessed by the Queen of Olympus. The ancient Greeks did not worship their gods in silence alone. They told stories, long winding tales passed from hearth to hearth, woven into the rhythm of daily life. For Hera, these stories revealed not only her majesty but her intimacy with mortals. Some were blessed under her care. Others, who broke vows or stood against her, felt the weight of her wrath. And so, around quiet fires and under starlit skies, these tales of Hera's hand in mortal lives took shape, reminding all who listened that love was sacred, fragile, and always under the gaze of the Queen of Olympus. In the city of Delos there lived a maiden named Sidip, daughter of a priest. She was known for her beauty, but even more for her purity and devotion. Many men sought her hand, but she refused, declaring she would remain in service to Hera as long as the goddess willed it. Yet love is not easily restrained. One young man, Acontius, became smitten with her. Desperate, he devised a plan. During a festival of Hera, when Sidip walked barefoot into the sacred grove, Acontius tossed at her feet an apple. Upon its skin were carved the words, "I swear by Hera to be the wife of Acontius." Unaware of the trap, Sidip picked up the apple and read the words aloud as was custom. In that moment she had sworn by Hera herself. The vow could not be broken. Each time her father tried to betroth her to another, illness struck her body, and dreams filled her nights with Hera's stern gaze. Only when she finally accepted Acontius did the sickness fade. From then on, parents whispered warnings to their daughters, "Be careful of your words under Hera's eye. For vows spoken are vows kept, whether you will them or not." Far from temples, in a small fishing village, an old widow lit a single oil lamp each night before Hera's likeness. Her husband had long passed into the shadows, yet she prayed still. Not for new love, nor for children grown and gone, but simply for endurance. "Queen of Heaven," she whispered, "you know loss as I know it. Sit beside me as the nights grow long." The people of the village sometimes mocked her, wondering why she prayed to Hera, goddess of marriage, when her marriage had ended in death. But the widow understood something deeper. Hera was not only for the beginning of love. She was its guardian even in memory, its shelter even when the bond had been severed by fate. Her quiet prayers became part of the sea wind itself, carrying across the waves. And those who listened closely swore they heard the soft cry of a peacock far beyond the horizon, as if Hera had answered her lonely devotion. Not all tales ended in blessing. Some revealed the dreadful cost of arrogance. Polytechnius of Colophon was a skilled craftsman, proud beyond measure. He boasted to his wife Eden that their love was greater even than that of Zeus and Hera. Foolish words. Hera, offended, devised a test. She sent down a challenge. Whichever of the two finished a task first would be rewarded. If Polytechnius lost, he must offer a slave to Hera. But pride consumed him. Rather than accept defeat, he stole and defiled the daughter of Eden's sister, disguising her as a slave and presenting her as his offering. When Eden discovered the truth, horror filled her heart. In rage she slew their son, and the house was drenched in blood. Hera's lesson was clear. To mock the sanctity of love, to twist devotion into arrogance, was to invite ruin. Among mortals, the tale was told not to frighten but to remind. Marriage is not a game of pride, but a covenant held in trembling reverence. Every spring, in small towns scattered across the Greek world, festivals arose not from command but from custom. Young brides would gather with olive branches, weaving them into garlands and carrying them to Hera's shrines. The air would ring with soft hymns, sung not by professional choirs but by trembling voices of women on the cusp of change. They prayed for harmony, for the strength to bear children, for peace in their new homes. Elders watched and wept softly, for they remembered their own youth. As each bride placed her garland upon the altar, the temple seemed to bloom with green. Some said Hera herself walked unseen among them, her hand brushing the garlands, her breath mingling with their prayers. Though known for wrath, Hera's compassion appeared in stories less told. In Lesbos, fishermen recounted a tale of a storm that nearly sank their fleet. Waves towered, lightning split the sea, and despair filled their hearts. In desperation they called not to Poseidon, master of waters, but to Hera, protector of their wives and children waiting on shore. The storm eased. The fishermen returned alive. And upon reaching land they built a small shrine, offering the first fish of every catch. They said, "She heard us not as sailors but as husbands. And because of our love she spared our lives." Across centuries, Hera's presence lingered not only in myths but in daily speech. In markets, women swore by her name when bargaining. In homes, mothers told daughters, "Be faithful as Hera watches." In courts, oaths were sealed with her invoked as witness. It was as if Hera's voice wove itself into the very fabric of life, a low hum beneath the louder cries of war, politics, and ambition. She was not only queen of Olympus, she was the quiet guardian at every hearth, every bed, every whispered vow in the night. And so Hera stands eternal, sometimes gentle, sometimes stern, always unyielding. She is the warmth of wedding torches and the chill of betrayed promises. She is the garland of olive leaves placed with trembling hands, and the storm that breaks upon prideful shores. As you close your eyes, imagine walking the steps of her temple once more. The stone is cool beneath your feet. The air carries incense and roses. Before you rises her statue, serene and majestic, a peacock at her side. You bow. You whisper your vow. And you know, whether in joy or sorrow, that Hera has heard, and that your promise is now woven into the eternal fabric of the cosmos. In the timeless halls of Olympus, where clouds drifted like slow rivers of silver, there was one presence that no god, no mortal, and no spirit of the underworld could ignore, the gaze of Hera, Queen of Heaven. When the poets of Greece sang of thunder, they sang of Zeus. When they sang of the seas, they called upon Poseidon. But when they whispered of vows, of oaths, of promises broken, they lowered their voices and spoke of Hera. She was not only the guardian of marriage and union. She was the silent keeper of justice, the one who watched and weighed the hidden actions of gods and mortals alike. Imagine for a moment the stillness of her judgment. Hera did not always act in haste. Her anger, when roused, was not a flash of lightning. It was the slow gathering of clouds on the horizon, the deep rumble of thunder rolling long before the storm. Mortals feared sudden wrath, but they feared even more the patience of Hera, who remembered every slight, every betrayal, every careless vow spoken under her name. Though Zeus ruled as king, it was Hera who reminded him and all others that power without order was chaos. Zeus wielded the thunderbolt, but Hera wielded something just as heavy: memory. She remembered every offense, every injustice, every broken oath. And with memory came consequence. The Greeks understood that justice was not only a matter of courts or councils. It was divine, woven into the very fabric of existence. Hera embodied that principle. She punished not out of cruelty but because promises mattered. Unions mattered. Fidelity mattered. To betray these was to fracture the harmony of life itself. Thus, her role as avenger was not separate from her role as protector. The two were bound like warp and weft in a tapestry. To guard the sanctity of marriage and vows, she had to punish those who defiled them. When brides swore their oaths before Hera's altar, their hands trembling, they knew her eyes would follow them forever. And if they faltered? If a husband strayed, if a wife broke her vows, whispers said Hera's spirit would drift into their dreams, filling their nights with unease. Some claimed to hear the rustle of a peacock's feathers outside their window when guilt weighed heavy on their hearts. Others swore that oil lamps flickered without wind, or that shadows lengthened at dusk, as though Hera herself had entered the room, silent but present. It was not always a violent punishment. Sometimes it was the gnawing of conscience, the creeping dread that grew with each passing day, until truth was confessed and vows were restored. Hera's justice was not confined to mortals. Even gods trembled when they crossed her. Apollo, radiant with light, and Artemis, swift as the hunt, learned that their mother Leto had suffered Hera's vengeance when she bore them. Dionysus, child of Semele, was born out of fire and tragedy, marked forever by Hera's jealousy. These were not random punishments. They were warnings. Hera was not merely punishing individuals. She was reminding the cosmos that laws were not to be broken. If Zeus himself could be defied, then Hera proved that even the king was not beyond reproach. Her wrath was therefore paradoxical. Feared, yes, but also necessary. Without her, oaths would crumble into dust, promises would dissolve, and the sacred trust between husband and wife, god and mortal, would lose all meaning. While many shrines to Hera were filled with garlands and bridal offerings, some carried a different weight. These were the temples where mortals came not to seek her blessing, but to beg for her mercy. In Argos, women accused of betrayal would stand barefoot before her statue, confessing their secrets aloud. In Samos, men would bring offerings of doves and oil, hoping to appease her after dishonoring their vows. Priests spoke softly in these places as though even their voices might stir the goddess's ire. The air was thick with incense, not sweet but heavy, designed to purify the guilty soul. Those who left the temple were changed. Some walked out relieved as though a burden had lifted. Others emerged pale and trembling, haunted by dreams for the rest of their lives. Unlike Ares, who rushed into battle with a roar, Hera waited. Days, years, even centuries could pass before her retribution fell. But it fell with precision, as though time itself had been waiting for the perfect moment. This patience made her punishments all the more terrifying. A mortal who had sinned against her might live long enough to think himself safe, only to see his children suffer, or his house crumble into ruin. Generations could carry the weight of one person's betrayal. Yet the Greeks did not see this as cruelty alone. They saw it as balance. Just as seasons turned, just as seeds grew into harvests, so too did betrayal ripen into consequence. Hera ensured that nothing planted in deceit would escape its harvest of pain. And still, Hera was not without compassion. To those who repented, who sought her forgiveness, she sometimes turned her wrath aside. There were stories of couples who fell to their knees at her altar, confessing their failings, and who later found renewed harmony in their marriage. Hera's justice could cut both ways, a sword of punishment but also a balm of reconciliation. This dual nature made her worship complex. She was not a goddess to approach lightly. She was not soft nor easily swayed. But she was just. Those who respected her, those who honored their vows, those who remained faithful, these she guarded fiercely, shielding them from misfortune, guiding their unions toward peace. So Hera stood, judge and avenger, queen and guardian. Her peacock feathers shimmered not only with beauty, but with eyes that saw everything. Her presence was like the slow tolling of a bell, solemn, inevitable, unforgotten. For mortals listening to these tales by firelight, the lesson was simple. Vows are sacred. Words spoken in Hera's name were threads binding the soul. To break them was to draw the gaze of the Queen of Olympus, and her gaze was one no mortal, or god, could escape. When mortals told stories of Hera's wrath, they did so not with malice but with awe. For to them, these tales were not simply about punishment. They were reminders woven into the fabric of memory, that choices had weight and that promises broken could never be ignored. Long ago in the city of Argos there lived a maiden named Io. She was a priestess of Hera, sworn to serve the goddess with purity and devotion. Her days were filled with incense smoke and sacred songs, her nights with quiet prayers whispered beneath the temple's high stone arches. But Io's beauty was radiant, and it caught the eye of Zeus himself. The king of the gods, restless and desiring, descended from Olympus in secret, veiling himself in clouds to approach her. Io trembled. She was bound to Hera by vows of service, yet Zeus's presence filled the air like thunder, impossible to resist. He promised her safety, he promised her love, and in his desperation he wove lies of reassurance. But Hera's eyes were everywhere. The Queen of Olympus sensed her husband's betrayal. She descended from her throne, her steps as heavy as the beating of 1,000 hearts, her gaze as sharp as fire. Zeus, desperate to conceal his deed, transformed Io into a snow-white cow, her eyes wide with terror. Hera did not believe the trick. She stroked the cow's soft flank, her lips curling in a bitter smile, and demanded the creature as a gift. Zeus, trapped by his own deceit, could not refuse. And so Io, once a priestess robed in white linen, became a trembling cow in Hera's pasture. Hera set Argus Panoptes, the 100-eyed giant, to guard her. By day dozens of eyes watched her graze. By night, half closed while half remained awake, never sleeping, never ceasing. Io wandered the meadows in sorrow. Her hooves sank into soft earth, her breath misted in the night air, and though she tried to speak, only a low, broken moo escaped her lips. At last Zeus sent Hermes to free her. The messenger crept close, his flute spilling soft, drowsy notes. Argus's eyes, one by one, fluttered shut, until all were closed. Hermes struck swiftly and the giant fell. But Hera's vengeance did not end there. She sent a gadfly, small yet merciless, to sting Io without rest. Across fields and rivers Io fled, her hooves pounding against stone, her eyes filled with tears. She crossed mountains, seas, and plains, until her name became a story of endless wandering. And though at last she found rest in Egypt, where Zeus restored her form and she bore children who would one day shape kingdoms, the Greeks remembered her not as a queen but as a symbol of sorrow, the price of betrayal paid through Hera's unyielding watch. Another tale carried whispers of sorrow deeper still. Leto, gentle and radiant, had captured Zeus's affection, and soon she bore within her womb the children Apollo and Artemis. But when Hera learned of this, fury ignited her heart. She cast a curse across the world. No land beneath the sun would offer Leto refuge. Wherever the goddess wandered, she was driven away. Mountains turned her aside, rivers refused to let her drink, towns barred their gates. Imagine her suffering. A woman heavy with child, her body aching, her lips cracked from thirst, her feet blistered from endless walking. She wandered the earth beneath Hera's decree, a shadow of exile. But at last, the floating island of Delos, unanchored to the earth, offered her shelter. Because it was no land fixed beneath the sun, it defied Hera's curse. There, with palms rustling in the sea breeze and the waves lapping gently against its shores, Leto gave birth to her radiant twins. The cries of newborn Apollo and Artemis echoed across the island, filling the sky with promise. The world rejoiced, but in every retelling the memory of Hera's relentless pursuit lingered. For the Greeks, this story was not merely about jealousy. It was about the weight of divine rivalry, the way Hera's justice fell even upon the innocent. Yet Delos thrived. Pilgrims came to honor Leto and her children, laying offerings at shrines by the sea. Some said that in those moments of devotion, Hera's anger softened, as though she too recognized the resilience of a mother's love. In the quiet forests, where leaves whispered like distant voices, there lived a nymph named Echo. She was lively and charming, her laughter flitting between trees like birdsong. But her gift was her downfall. Echo had a voice so enchanting that even the gods paused to listen. She spoke with wit and joy, weaving stories that delighted every ear. Yet when Zeus descended to the woods in pursuit of mortal women, it was Echo who distracted Hera with endless chatter. She told stories, asked questions, sang songs, all to keep the queen's suspicion at bay. But Hera discovered the trick. Her punishment was not thunderous, not violent. It was subtle, cruel in its simplicity. She took from Echo the power of speech, leaving her only the ability to repeat the last words spoken to her. Imagine the silence that followed. A nymph once radiant with laughter reduced to fragments of sound, a mirror of others' voices. She wandered the woods, her eyes brimming with tears, her lips forming words that were never her own. From then on, Every echo in the mountains, every voice bouncing back from stone, was said to be her sorrow, a lingering reminder of Hera's punishment, a warning whispered across the hills. Perhaps no tale was darker than that of Semele, daughter of Cadmus of Thebes. She was a mortal woman, beautiful and proud, and she too captured Zeus's wandering eye. Their union was secret, tender beneath the shadows of night. But Hera discovered it as she always did. Disguising herself as an old woman, she visited Semele and sowed seeds of doubt. "If Zeus truly loves you," she murmured, "ask him to reveal himself in his divine glory. Only then will you know he speaks truth." Semele, young and trusting, listened. The next time Zeus came to her, she asked her fatal request, "Show me your true self as you show yourself to Hera." Zeus pleaded, begged her to take back her words, but she insisted. Bound by his oath, he revealed his divine form: lightning, thunder, fire brighter than the sun. The brilliance consumed her mortal body, reducing her to ash. But within her womb was a child. Zeus, in grief, plucked the unborn Dionysus from her and sewed him into his thigh, where he would grow until birth. The Greeks told this story in hushed tones, for it was not only a tale of Hera's cunning but of the peril of desire, of the fragile line between love and ruin. Hera did not strike Semele with a weapon. She struck her with doubt, with words whispered like poison, and in that way she proved herself a master of vengeance subtler than any storm. Through these stories, Hera revealed her duality. She was the guardian of vows, the protector of fidelity, but also the avenger of betrayal. Her punishments were not random, they were mirrors held to the actions of others. Io's wandering revealed the torment of unfaithfulness. Leto's exile revealed the weight of rivalry. Echo's silence revealed the cost of deceit. Semele's death revealed the danger of pride and trust misplaced. The Greeks did not tell these tales to condemn Hera. They told them to remember that choices echo through time, and that under Hera's watch, no vow is forgotten, no betrayal unpunished. The stories of Io, Leto, Echo, and Semele were only fragments of a larger truth. Hera's reach extended far beyond the well-known myths. She was not only the queen of Olympus, nor merely the wife of Zeus, she was the force of consequence itself. Her presence lingered in tales less often told, in whispers of dark punishment and moments of fragile reconciliation. Among the shadows of ancient Libya there lived a queen named Lamia. Once she was beautiful and beloved, and Zeus, in his endless hunger, pursued her. Their union angered Hera as so many others had before. But this time, her vengeance fell not only on the woman but on the children she bore. One by one Hera destroyed them. Lamia, broken with grief, wandered the deserts with eyes swollen from endless weeping. Her sorrow twisted her body and soul, until she became a figure of terror, a monster said to devour the children of others in her despair. Yet some whispered that it was not cruelty alone that shaped Lamia's fate. Hera's punishment was also a reflection of anguish. The goddess of marriage betrayed once more, striking back not only at the guilty but at the innocent, because pain rarely confines itself neatly. When mothers in Greece soothed their children to sleep, they sometimes warned them, "Be still or Lamia will come." Yet beneath the fear lay a lesson deeper still. Choices echo across generations, and Hera's wrath, once awakened, could twist beauty into ruin. Perhaps no mortal endured Hera's vengeance more than Heracles, son of Zeus and Alcmene. From his first breath, Hera hated him, for he was living proof of her husband's betrayal. She sent serpents into his cradle, twin coils of death slithering toward the infant. Yet even as a babe, Heracles grasped the snakes in his tiny fists and crushed them. The act did not ease Hera's fury. Throughout his life she pursued him relentlessly. It was Hera who struck him with madness, causing him to slay his wife and children in a frenzy of uncontrollable rage. When he awoke and saw what he had done, grief consumed him, and to atone he was bound to the service of Eurystheus, condemned to complete the 12 labors. Each task seemed impossible: slaying the Nemean lion, capturing the golden hind, cleaning the Augean stables. But through them all Hera's shadow loomed. She placed obstacles, stirred beasts, and sent trials. And yet, in a strange way, her vengeance shaped his legend. Without her fury, Heracles might never have risen to greatness. Thus the Greeks saw Hera not only as punisher but as forge. Just as iron must be struck by fire and hammer to become strong, so too did mortals grow through trial. Hera's wrath burned, but it tempered. Heracles emerged scarred but immortalized, his name sung for ages. Hera's vengeance extended even into the fate of nations. When the Trojan prince Paris judged Aphrodite more beautiful than Hera in the contest of the golden apple, Hera's rage simmered deep. She vowed never to forget the insult. And so, when the Trojan War began, she stood unyielding against the city. While Zeus wavered in neutrality, Hera plotted, cajoled, and fought. She swayed other gods, she deceived her husband with seductive charm to distract him, and she poured her wrath into every battle cry of the Greeks. For the Trojans, her anger was relentless. Walls crumbled, heroes fell, and though the war was long, Hera's memory was longer. It was not merely Paris she punished, but an entire city, reminding mortals that the insult of one could draw ruin upon many. And yet, for all her vengeance, Hera was not without balance. The Greeks did not see her as only cruel. They saw her as inevitable. She was the storm that followed arrogance, the silence that followed betrayal, the weight that even kings and heroes could not ignore. Her justice was not chaos. It was rhythm as steady as the beating of a heart. For every union blessed, there was a vow broken. For every promise honored, another was betrayed. Hera was the force that ensured these acts did not vanish unmarked. In this way she resembled the seasons. Spring brought weddings and joy, autumn brought reckoning and decay. Just as the earth renewed itself, so too did Hera's punishments renew balance. Ordinary people felt her presence in subtle ways. A bride who faltered in her vows might dream of Hera's peacock, its many eyes unblinking. A husband who strayed might find his crops failing, his house plagued by misfortune. But those who remained faithful often felt her protection. Couples who prayed together at her altar told stories of long marriages, of children born strong, of homes blessed with peace. To them, Hera was not a terror but a shield, fierce against betrayal but tender to devotion. And so her worship carried both fear and love, an uneasy blend that reflected the truth of all relationships. For love itself is fragile, capable of joy and of pain. Hera's presence reminded mortals of this duality, guarding them with one hand, punishing with the other. As centuries passed, empires rose and fell. Yet Hera's stories lingered. They were told not only in temples but in quiet households, by mothers to daughters, by husbands to wives. Her name became woven into the very breath of human vows. She was remembered not simply as queen, nor simply as avenger, but as the one who ensured promises had meaning. For without consequence, words are empty. Hera gave them weight. And so, even now, when thunder rolls in the distance and vows are spoken beneath the stars, her presence feels near, a reminder that love is sacred, and that betrayal carries shadows that cannot be escaped. As night settles over Olympus, imagine Hera seated upon her throne. Around her, the halls are silent, save for the faint rustle of peacock feathers. Her eyes, countless and unblinking, sweep across the world. She does not rage, she does not speak. She waits. For justice does not need haste. Justice, like Hera, is patient, and in the stillness of her watch, every vow is heard, every oath remembered, every betrayal marked. So close your eyes and breathe deeply. The Queen of Heaven keeps her vigil, and beneath her eternal gaze the world rests in balance. The myths of Hera were not confined to the age of heroes. They lived on in the voices of poets, in the rituals of cities, and in the private prayers of mortals who sought her blessing. To the Greeks, Hera was not only a goddess of Olympus, distant and radiant, but a presence that walked quietly through their daily lives. Her legacy extended far beyond the stories of vengeance or protection. It seeped into the stones of temples, into the rhythm of festivals, into the very breath of marriage vows whispered beneath the night sky. Across the Greek world, great sanctuaries rose in her honor. In Samos, one of the oldest and most revered, pilgrims arrived from distant lands. The temple stood tall above the sea, its columns catching the golden light of dawn. Priests tended the altars and brides came barefoot, carrying wreaths of olive and myrtle. The air smelled of salt and incense. Birds circled above as if drawn to the holiness of the place. The faithful believed that Hera herself had been born on Samos, and so the island carried her spirit in its soil, in its waters, in its winds. In Argos, another sanctuary stood, vast and solemn, known as the Heraean. There, processions of women wound their way up the hill, their garments flowing, their torches flickering against the night. Songs filled the air, hymns sung in slow rhythmic voices that echoed like waves against the stone walls. For the Greeks, to walk into Hera's temple was to step into sacred stillness. The columns seemed alive, each a guardian of vows. The statues of the goddess gazed serenely, but their eyes carried the weight of judgment. To kneel there was to place one's soul in her hands, to confess silently, to promise fidelity anew. Festivals dedicated to Hera were not only grand affairs of sacrifice and feasting, but intimate reminders of her presence in human unions. In some cities, the Heraia was celebrated with races of young women. Dressed in short tunics, their hair flowing, they ran in honor of the goddess. The dust of the stadium rose beneath their feet, the crowd cheered softly, and in their swiftness, mortals felt Hera's blessing upon youthful energy and future marriage. Other festivals centered on renewal. Husbands and wives, after years together, would return to Hera's altar to repeat their vows. They laid offerings not of gold or jewels, but of simple gifts. Loaves of bread, jars of honey, small garlands of flowers. These tokens reminded them that love was not built on grandeur but on daily devotion, on the steady rhythm of life shared. In these gatherings, laughter mingled with reverence. Children played among the columns, elders told stories of their own unions, and through it all Hera's presence was felt not as wrath, but as warmth, the steady flame of commitment that endured through generations. The poets did not forget her. Hesiod spoke of her majesty. Homer described her seated beside Zeus, her beauty radiant even in anger. Later voices sang of her as the eternal queen, the one who watched while others faltered. Lyric poets, their verses carried by music, often invoked Hera at weddings. The notes of flutes drifted through night air, while brides blushed and grooms clasped trembling hands. The songs reminded all present that their union was not merely of flesh and desire, but of sacred vow, bound by the gaze of Hera herself. In these poems she was not only fierce but tender. She was compared to the gentle bloom of the lily, to the steadfast oak that stood unshaken through storms. To sing of Hera was to sing of constancy, the rare jewel of love that endured. Beyond temples and festivals, Hera's memory lived in the quiet hearths of homes. A small figurine carved from wood or clay might sit in the corner, adorned with simple offerings of oil or bread. Wives prayed to her for peace in their homes, for health of their children, for fidelity of their husbands. At night, before oil lamps were extinguished, some women whispered, "Hera, keep watch while I sleep." These prayers were not grand. They were intimate, fragile, woven into the silence of daily life. Even men who feared her wrath sought her favor. A husband traveling far might whisper to Hera, asking that his wife remain safe, that his home stand firm until he returned. For all their fear of her vengeance, they knew also her power to protect what was most precious. Thus Hera's legacy stretched across two paths, one of awe and fear and one of tenderness and devotion. She was the avenger, yes, but also the guardian. She was remembered for serpents sent to Heracles' cradle, but also for the wreaths of brides placed lovingly on her altars. The Greeks did not separate these truths. To them, love itself carried both joy and sorrow, blessing and trial. Hera embodied that complexity. She was not a goddess of simple smiles or unbroken peace. She was the storm and the calm, the vow and the consequence, the crown of marriage and the shadow of betrayal. And so, when mortals remembered her, they did not choose one aspect. They remembered all. They told stories by firelight, stories that mingled laughter with trembling, devotion with caution. In every word, they carried her legacy forward, not as myth alone, but as truth woven into the human heart. When the Greek world spread its myths across seas and centuries, Hera's presence traveled with it. Her name shifted, her rituals transformed, but the essence of her being, guardian of vows, queen of heaven, avenger of betrayal, remained. When the Romans encountered the myths of Greece, they did not erase Hera. Instead, they welcomed her into their pantheon, clothing her in new titles and weaving her into their own traditions. To the Romans she became Juno. Juno was not merely borrowed. She was transformed. In Rome, she embodied sovereignty, motherhood, and the sacred bond of matrimony. But she also took on new dimensions. She was Juno Regina, queen of the state, protector of the Roman people. She was Juno Lucina, who brought light to newborn children as they entered the world. She was Juno Moneta, guardian of memory and advisor of the state. In every form, the echo of Hera's essence remained: strength, majesty, protection, and an unshakable demand for fidelity. Across cultures beyond Greece and Rome, Hera's figure resonated with something deeper than myth. She represented the archetype of the eternal queen, the divine consort, the sovereign partner, the embodiment of dignity and authority within relationship and cosmos alike. This archetype lives in countless myths. In Mesopotamia, there was Inanna and later Ishtar, who combined love, power, and fury. In Egypt, there was Isis, the eternal mother and queenly consort of Osiris. In India, there was Parvati, devoted to Shiva, both nurturing and fierce. Each of these, in their own way, mirrored Hera, protectors of union, guardians of order, and avengers of broken promises. Hera was not only a Greek goddess. She was the voice of an eternal pattern, the recognition that love and loyalty, once promised, demand reverence. Greek philosophers, though not always gentle toward the myths, still carried Hera within their thoughts. Plato, in his dialogues, often used myths to illustrate eternal truths. When he spoke of the balance of opposites, of male and female, of harmony and union, echoes of Hera's essence resonated quietly in the background. For what was marriage if not a living symbol of balance? Aristotle, writing on ethics, considered the household the foundation of society. And at the heart of the household was union. The Greeks did not need to name Hera in every line of philosophy. Her presence was already assumed. She was the silent partner in their reasoning, the divine witness to every debate about order, justice, and loyalty. Later Stoic thinkers saw the gods as personifications of cosmic forces. For them, Hera was more than myth. She was the force of relational order, the law that binds together not only husband and wife but city and citizen, ruler and ruled, god and mortal. In Rome, the presence of Juno, Hera's Roman mirror, was as constant as breath. Brides invoked her name before their weddings. Pregnant women lit candles to her in hopes of safe childbirth. Soldiers prayed to her as they marched into battle, asking her to guard their vows of loyalty to Rome itself. Every Roman household knew her. Small statues stood near the hearth, wreaths hung above doors, coins carried her face. She was not distant. She was immediate, woven into the rituals of daily life, as close as the promise whispered between two lovers, as mighty as the vow sworn by a general before his troops. Through centuries, storytellers also remembered Hera as a symbol of jealousy. Yet jealousy itself, when examined gently, reveals deeper truths. Jealousy is not only fury, it is also the ache of love wounded, the cry for fidelity. When poets painted Hera as relentless in her wrath, they were also confessing humanity's own struggle with loyalty and betrayal. Hera embodied not merely divine vengeance, but the human heart itself, fragile and fierce. She reminded mortals that love is not casual, that vows once made cannot be tossed aside without consequence. Thus even her darker stories carried lessons. They were warnings to treat devotion with care, to honor promises, to hold sacred what is sacred. As time passed and new faiths rose, Hera's temples faded, her festivals dimmed. Yet her essence did not vanish. In Christianity, the Virgin Mary emerged as Queen of Heaven, protector of mothers, figure of devotion and constancy. Though gentler in form, she carried forward echoes of Hera's eternal archetype. In medieval queens, crowned beside their kings, chroniclers saw reflections of Juno's majesty. In folk tales of faithful wives and vengeful lovers, whispers of Hera lingered. Even in modern thought, when people speak of partnership as sacred, of vows as binding, they are, without knowing, repeating Hera's lesson. The eternal queen lives on, not in marble statues alone, but in the very structure of human imagination. To remember Hera today is not only to recall ancient myth, but to see her presence in our own lives. She reminds us that relationships require honor. She teaches that promises once made are holy. She whispers that loyalty is not weakness, but strength, the kind that holds lives together through storms. In her shadow we remember that love is not always gentle. It can be fierce, demanding, consuming. And yet, it is this very intensity that makes it real, that roots it deeply into the soil of human hearts. Even now, when people walk down aisles to pledge their lives to one another, when they speak vows beneath the gaze of families and communities, Hera is there, silent, invisible but eternal. The stories of Hera, queen of Olympus, have flowed across centuries like a river winding through valleys, mountains, and seas. At times the current was fierce, swollen with thunder, carrying tales of vengeance and wrath. At other times it ran gently, clear and serene, carrying whispers of devotion, loyalty, and protection. And even now, when the temples lie in ruins, when the hymns are no longer sung in public squares, the river has not dried. It continues to flow quietly in the human imagination, in the bonds of marriage, in the ideals of loyalty, and in the silent recognition that love is as fierce as it is tender. Imagine walking among the ruins of a great temple. The columns stand broken, their tops jagged against the sky. Vines curl around fallen stones. Birds nest where once priests lit sacred flames. The silence is heavy. And yet, as the wind passes through the ruins, it feels as though the air still carries a presence, as though Hera herself lingers there, not gone but waiting. For this is the nature of myth. It does not die when rituals fade. It does not vanish when languages change. Myth lingers. It waits in the soil, in the memory of stories, in the hush of evening when people reflect upon love, upon loyalty, upon betrayal. Hera's name may no longer be shouted in festivals, but her essence lives wherever promises are made and kept, or made and broken. Hera's legacy reminds us that love is not simple. It is not always soft nor always easy. Love binds deeply, but in binding, it can wound when broken. Hera is the reminder of this duality, that to commit is to risk, that to pledge is to give power not only to joy but to sorrow. When we think of her jealousy, we are reminded that fidelity is fragile and must be tended. When we think of her protection, we are reminded that fidelity, when honored, becomes a fortress against time. In both roles, Hera teaches the same lesson. Love is sacred, and sacred things demand reverence. Even without temples, Hera's spirit lingers within human hearts. Every time two people join hands and whisper vows of devotion, they echo the ancient prayers once spoken in her sanctuaries. Every time loyalty is defended, every time betrayal brings pain, every time forgiveness or vengeance arises from the wound of broken trust, Hera is there. She is not confined to myth. She is present in the very structure of human relationships, in the invisible threads that bind people together. In that sense, Hera has never left. She continues to reign, not from a golden throne upon Olympus, but from the quiet spaces where promises are whispered, where loyalty is tested, and where love endures. Picture now the goddess seated once more upon her throne. The marble halls of Olympus are hushed. Torches burn low, their flames steady and calm. The other gods sleep, their laughter silenced, their quarrels forgotten for a while. Only Hera remains awake. Her gaze sweeps the world below. She sees the flicker of hearth fires in humble homes. She hears the laughter of children, the quiet sighs of lovers, the vows spoken in secrecy. She also hears the sobs of betrayal, the lonely prayers of those abandoned. She watches, she remembers, she does not forget. This is Hera's eternal role, to be the witness. The one who keeps account, the one who honors devotion and calls out betrayal. In her watch, the universe maintains its balance. As long as humans cherish love, as long as they honor marriage, as long as they struggle with loyalty and faith, Hera remains. She is the eternal queen, the crown that does not tarnish, the vow that does not fade. She lives not only in Greece, not only in Rome, not only in temples or poems, but in every heart that loves fiercely, protects loyally, and demands honesty. To speak of Hera is to speak of humanity itself, of its hopes and fears, its joys and sorrows, its longing for devotion and its trembling before betrayal. Hera is the mirror in which humanity sees its deepest bonds reflected. And so, as this long journey through Hera's story comes to its close, let us breathe deeply and rest in her presence. Let us remember that myths are not only old tales, but mirrors of our own lives, teaching us, guiding us, soothing us. Tonight, as you listen, allow Hera's legacy to become a gentle rhythm in your mind, the rhythm of vows made and kept, the rhythm of love that endures, the rhythm of a queen's eternal watch. Close your eyes. Feel the calm rise around you. Imagine the soft light of Olympus fading into twilight. Imagine Hera seated upon her throne, not stern, not wrathful, but calm, protective, steady. She is there to watch so that you may rest. The world is quiet now. The gods sleep. The universe breathes slowly. And you, beneath Hera's eternal gaze, may drift into dreams, safe and untroubled. Good night. Sleep well beneath the sky of Olympus, and dream of queens, of gods, and of timeless stars.